While the first season of Megaforce was bad, the second season is where we truly hit the wall. Wounds from Megaforce became infected. But since this is the part where we're doing the legendary battle and all the anniversary stuff, any flaws we found in Megaforce only get worse in Super Megaforce. Let's begin with the opening. Aboard the Armada's flagship, we meet our villains for this season. In terms of introduction, Prince Vrak is certainly a step up from Prince Warsgil in the Sentai. Warsgil was introduced as being a childish idiot sent to a backwater planet like Earth in hopes it was easy pickings for conquering because the Sentai teams at the time were powerless. Here, we get a different story. It makes sense to make Prince Vrak more threatening since Earth's Rangers haven't been defeated, and I like the idea that he is so arrogant he is completely unwilling to accept defeat. And the idea that he's arrogant because he's effective at conquest makes for a good premise as a starter villain. Except his characterization is undone pretty rapidly, but we'll get to that later. So the general atmosphere of hopelessness is helped by how this season's grunts, the X-Borgs, are going through American sets such as the school and the mall. Even the command center and the surroundings look worse for wear. Then Gosei goes, "The world has never seen an invasion like this." Yes it has. Gosei, the last time this happened, it killed your mentor. Either mention that or this, instead of showing the Armada just brutalizing random civilians. We know that stock footage from multiple unproduced crossovers exist. To that I say, use that to show the teams are getting their butts kicked, and just say it's the Armada forces. Just use some clever editing to hide the foot soldiers. That way you can play up the whole world has never seen a threat like this, because quite frankly, taking the upper hand against 20 years worth of Ranger teams versus 6 years of Countdown to Destruction makes the scope seem a bit larger. So the Megaforce Rangers gain the Ranger keys for Super Megaforce and the Legendary mode. Then we get the whole, there's a simple explanation for that line. It's a funny line, but the fact it's become overused to describe Megaforce as a whole just makes it hard to laugh at in hindsight. So, we get the Super Megaforce suits. Frankly, I would have merely destroyed the Megaforce powers at the end of last season so we wouldn't have to bear the padding of multiple transformation sequences, but whatever. I like the suits because I liked Gokaiger. And for the first legendary mode, we do Samurai. While I have seen complaining about not using the themes, I don't care in this case. However, in a tribute episode, which this is not using the themes is a sin. We'll get to that later. So after Samurai, they go for Mystic Force, and then Headridge is destroyed by Final Strike. But Vrak sends another commander out, and they show off SPD and Ninja Storm. Here I disagree because we don't use the morphing calls for SPD or Ninja Storm, but that's me nitpicking for now. Those of you who watch Gokaiger note that Bokenger/Overdrive wasn't represented in this shot. The original Sentai footage showed Gosei red, but it makes sense to replace that and have Overdrive's Red Ranger be there. Not only do the white and red color schemes correspond pretty well, but also this is a tribute to the last anniversary Power Rangers had. And even though I didn't like Overdrive, I do appreciate that Overdrive is here and represented. Anyways, we get this season's Growing the Monster gimmick, the Maximizer, which is just a space laser. Honestly, I like the Zombats better, even though Levira says the Maximizer is so much better than the Zombats. And of course we get the new Zord, the Skyship, monsters destroyed, and we get the ending. I sort of disagree with here. Seeing the school currently mostly back to normal by the efforts of students isn't exactly great for building stakes. It feels like they just hit the reset button. Honestly, I would have preferred seeing the city smolder a bit more. And to some extent, the city is smoldering a bit more in the next episode. Although personally, if I was writing this, the Rangers would basically end up traveling everywhere in the Skyship and just living on it. Why? Because they're basically being hunted by the Armada, who is considered the biggest threat the Rangers have ever faced so far. Why not destroy the Megaforce headquarters and have Gosei pull a sacrifice that emulates Zordon's sacrifice, while the Rangers take all the keys and just sail along in the Skyship? I mean, perfect excuse to go travel around the world and meet other Rangers. Yes, I get there are lulls in combat, but the Armada is supposed to be built up as this countdown to destruction level threat, and I'm just sitting here like, you're sort of taking the wind out of the sails when you do this sort of thing, where things are seemingly going back to normal, rather than just trying to see, like, I don't know, maybe parts of the mall are barricaded with sandbags or something like that. It feels really disheartening. Meanwhile, Prince Vikar stops having the triumphant but arrogant attitude and goes back to war skills and aptitude with some personality mixed in there. If you wanted to have a villain who was comedic and had a personality while still being intimidating at the same time, just have him be a Joker or Kefka figure, a childish sadist who poses a legitimate threat. Meanwhile, in episode 2, Noah is a moron viewing a top secret database of the Rangers at school on a computer that faces the door with a window. Smart one, everyone. Meanwhile, Troy stumbles upon the procession of X-Borgs, who are about to fire missiles designed to drill through the earth and blow up every major city from the underground. Because this was a Deca Ranger slash SPD homage in the Sentai, we clearly do not have an actor willing to come back, thus a good chunk of this is American footage. Like, you couldn't have had a young Anubis Kruger be here, considering the time period. This takes place in, 2013, 2014, whereas SPD takes place in, 2025. I mean, it's not a surprise to see Kruger here in the continuity. Not to mention, John Toohey, who plays him, lives in New Zealand. And you know what else? He did voice work during Samurai. Clearly he was there. I'm sure he could have been available. Maybe he was contacted, maybe he was not. I don't know. What I just know is they basically stripped the SPD tribute here in order to have this episode. Anyways, Vikar is pissy, American fight scene footage, Morphin Legendary mode. Rangers, you have now unlocked new modes that have never been seen before on this planet. To that I say, ¿Qué es esto? No, ¿por qué es esto? ¿Es un chiste? In all seriousness, these are the suits from Goseiger Sentai Zyuranger. For yet another season, we have Gosei handing out powers with no explanation. At least with the first season of Megaforce, they were all Megaforce power from Goseiger, and thus have similar aesthetics and design philosophy. When it comes to Sentai-only teams, however, this is a line in the show that should not get crossed. Once more, it's a Deus Ex Machina being used to gut any opportunity for world building and lore. At least the comics built up the world with these characters. Meanwhile, what the hell is Megaforce doing? Nothing with them. They're just there because of the Sentai footage, and they're too lazy to edit it out. Seriously, did they spend all their editing money on just original fight scenes in this episode? So yes, we have the cargo nuts, and of course they get another power-up in addition to the new powers, because why the heck not? And they do some SPD homage, which feels hollow because, well, this is Megaforce. Nothing is ever earned. Yeah, they kill the monster, fly up into space, and proceed to lay waste to the fleet. You know, when you can knock out half of the entire fleet and just cut away declaring victory, that's not a good way to maintain any tension you built up in the last episode. Next episode, Blue Saber Saga. Noah trains in the middle of the forest. Noah, you ain't Joe. They get yet another power-up, the Mystic Force Dragon. Why Mystic Force? I don't know. I'm just gonna steal Linkara's joke and say, it's magic, we don't need to explain it. Next episode, Lion's Alliance, where they go to the Animarium to find a lion. Wild Force powers are used, but no theme song. Seriously, why is this a problem? I'm hoping it's not a rights issue either. The Lion Zord gets pissed for them at trespassing and possibly deceiving them, but hey, they get another power-up. I complained about Gosei handing this to them, but this is the Lion willingly joining them. Honestly, I don't mind this one as much. I still mind it because of the power-up mania and the fact I didn't feel like they actually earned this one. Once more, Vrak is going nuts because of recent failures. Once again, you could keep his childishness if you made him more like the Joker or Kefka and not a bumbling, inept fool. Samurai surprise. Jake and Noah meet Mentor G. Props to Noah's actor because I do buy his whole "where have I seen you before" face to the "oh my, I know who you totally are" face. Okay, so Madakor from the Armada's elite guard arrives, and the adults head for Earth. Mighty Morphin gets thrashed around, Lost Galaxy also gets thrashed around, Noah gets thrashed around by Argus, Vrak gets cut, Levira's words not mine, which forces the enemy to retreat. As a tribute episode to Samurai, this feels pathetic. I know it was literally last year in terms of airing, but this is sad. Jaden is here. He just hands them a power-up, the double disc. Oh, if only these Rangers were forced to train and earn their powers and not anything else. So as expected, Monster Destroy. Not sure why we simply couldn't adapt Goseiger versus Shinkenger, considering the Goseigers, the Gokaigers, and the Shinkengers were all in that crossover and could have been utilized in some way. So after Samurai Surprise, we get our next tribute episode, called Spirit of the Tiger, in which is a Jungle Fury tribute. So we meet our next villain with the power over magnetism. This one actually came from a Geki Ranger / Jungle Fury crossover, something that wasn't adapted in America. So, well, the context for this guy is sort of missing, but I don't mind. This is not relevant. But what is relevant is that this monster can remove weapons via magnetism, which makes Troy extra dickish because a ranger never lets go of his weapon. What's wrong with him? I really want to know. Well, while they do poorly, they use Wild Force's animal-like martial arts style to actually fight Pachamak. I think that's what his name is. These monsters of the week blend in eventually. You know what other teams use martial arts? Jungle Fury. Guess who meets Casey? I'm not annoyed with this one as I was with Samurai or the Wild Force tribute episodes, since these two did work to unlock their animal spirits. And they do defeat the monster. This legitimately feels earned. They do get an animal spirit upgrade, but I do find this passable. Again, they actually worked for this. And Jason Smith is back as Casey, who plays a seasoned mentor pretty well. Next two episodes are Power of 6. So, anytime the Armada shows up, the Rangers arrive only to see the Armada completely devastated. The Rangers are baffled at the idea of a Silver Ranger. Not sure why nobody said, "Hey, do you think Robo Knight could be back?" Really odd that they hide the face as if this was someone we know. Yes, I understand the concept of intrigue, but Megaforce does not get the honor of me assuming stupidity over malice. Well, assuming stupidity over competent intrigue. In the next episode, we get the backstory for Orion here. He's from the planet Andrasia, which was raised by the Armada. Before that, Orion apparently dug up the Silver Ranger key in Morpher, which was on Andrasia for some reason. Why? And after living months in an Armada-controlled Andrasia, he shoots down a ship and uses it to get to Earth after repairing it. He takes it down with a slingshot and a rock. Okay, I love that. Probably because the rock is also part of a crystal the Morpher was entombed in, but also the fact that these Armada ships are just made out of, cardboard. Clothing montage, not sure why, since the Rangers wear the same clothes every single day. Next episode, Battleizer time. Next episode, Tensou is lost. An episode with very little substance, and probably quite absurdly expensive to make. This goes for the next two episodes. I do generally question what the hell they were thinking about adapting them. Episode 13. At least this power-up was built by Noah. The pacing is horrendous because multiple Sentai episodes were strung together with little in the way of trying to actually make them work. I mean, really, did you blow the budget on the Tensou is Lost episode? Next episode, we get In the Driver's Seat, where Professor Cog, from last year's crossover Clash of the Red Rangers, decides to menace the mainline Power Rangers universe. Why does he want to menace the mainline Power Rangers universe besides conquest? What happened to Venjix? Who rebuilt you after you blew up by the hands of a samurai and singular RPM ranger? Why is nothing explained at all? What was the point of this? Oh wait, I know the point of this. Just reusing the footage from Zyuranger. The Rangers, like, go to Corinth and say, this is like stepping into Ranger history. To which I say, which history? RPM had a completely different setting and premise from Zyuranger. This isn't Corinth, or maybe it is because they rebuilt. Rather, this is the machine world from Zyuranger, which is not RPM. This, my friend, isn't a tribute to RPM. This is a tribute to Zyuranger, with RPM tacked on. Nobody involved with RPM is ever present here. Hell, I think Olivia Tennant, who played Dr. K, lives in New Zealand. Why isn't she here? Because she'd probably build something like this out of guilt for, destroying the world. And apparently, the Carzord speeding up and down the highways with Turbo Falcon locked away because it couldn't be controlled. Once again, would it be that hard to have Olivia Tennant phone this in, quite literally, saying, I want to do some voice work over these lines rather than have Noah tell it to us? Like, come on, what is wrong with this? What is wrong with this show? I do question the sobriety of these Rangers because their best course of action here is to grab a bullhorn and yell at the Zord speeding up and down the highway. I sort of expected the Zord to be a bit more rampagey rather than whatever this is. Meanwhile, Professor Cog gets into a fight with the Armada because stupid reasons. Yeah, Vikar's mad that Cog is taking his glory and, attacks Cog. This is just so dumb. What kind of tribute episode is this? So Professor Cog is destroyed. I'm sure Venjix is going to rebuild him sometime in the future. Alright, Venjix is gone because of this whole machine world footage making Corinth look a lot more advanced and not having a simulated dome or anything. Next episode. Feels like a rush two-parter because in the Sentai was a multi-part arc. This episode ends with them declaring victory because Prince Vakar and Argus are dead. I will remind you, the last time you did this with Malkor's death, it led to you dealing with Vrak again. I suppose that was the point, but at this time, you would really think that these dolts would learn not to count their chickens before they hatched, especially when you realize that they only destroyed Argus and Vakar, and not the Armada mothership. I can buy the fact that they felt like the battle was over after Malkor died, because Malkor ended up being blown up along with the mothership of the Warstar aliens. That is really hard to argue that the battle isn't over because of how many things this ship holds, from just scientific material to foot soldiers to whatever. They didn't total party kill the generals this time either. They also killed Kreepox and Biggs and Bluefur. In Metal Alice, though there's a continuity error there. Come on. Not to mention, you guys remember, you did not kill Vrak. Okay, so Vrak here. He gloats over the death of his dim-witted brother. I'm not sure why they didn't actually bother to make the two interact. Oh wait, there were plans to make them interact, but those got shot down. Then he plants his first drill. Kidnaps Orion, and Vrak intends to use Orion's powers to block Legendary Mode and power his drills. In terms of voice, Vrak is honestly a better voice than any of you villains so far, and honestly he has earned the right to gloat here. Now for some censorship. Yeah, Sentai footage, this was Bajira choking Alada, but this is American footage. No. Of course he has control of Robo Knight, and after defeating a monster, we get an interesting twist. The monster's defeat is built into the plan. I've seen complaints about why Vrak doesn't simply plant the drills himself, especially since he lacks Bajira's limitation because Dark Gosei power and Gosei power are two different things. I can actually see why. If he planted them himself, the Rangers would be fresh and ready to destroy him pretty quickly. However, Vrak's plan to exhaust them mentally and physically is actually great. They're holding back when fighting a friend like Robo Knight, so they end up taking a ton of damage. Meanwhile, Dark Robo Knight doesn't have that limitation. He can just walk through them. And of course, they have to destroy the monsters because the monsters will kill a bunch of people if they don't. This is basically forcing the Rangers' hands and forcing them to make tough decisions. And it's brilliant. It's the mind games that I sort of expect from a villain like Vrak to play. But Troy goes Super Saiyan, and Detroit smashes Robo Knight to break Vrak's control. Again, in the Sentai, Alada was an angel. This made more sense. Here, Troy just goes Super Saiyan. Because I guess Andrew Gray's a Dragon Ball Z fan. I'm not sure if that's actually true. So after that, Robo Knight attempts to menace Vrak and just shoot him, which is a good idea. Vrak, not being a moron, sets his base to self-destruct immediately after blasting Robo Knight and chooses to leave as soon as possible. And since this base is at the bottom of the ocean, he intends to kill both Robo Knight and Orion in an attempt to either blow up the base or just have the water crush them. Which, honestly, fair enough. Vrak confronts the Rangers one final time, using a solar eclipse to help enhance his powers, which the Rangers tap into to finally destroy Vrak. Then they rescue Orion, who survived because Robo Knight sacrificed himself. So here's the deal with Vrak is back as a two-parter. It's the only time Megaforce feels like there are actual legitimate stakes. Vrak completely outplayed the Gosei Ex Machina by blocking Legendary mode, and he put Rangers in a situation where they would hold back, but he wouldn't, basically giving them heavy injuries. And he forced their hands to destroy monsters lest they ravage the earth. If it wasn't for Troy going Super Saiyan, Vrak would have won. Hell, Vrak did leave with a win. His intention was to kill both Robo Knight and Orion at the bottom of the ocean. While he couldn't kill them both, he did force one into a situation where one would die and one did die. And as much crap as I throw at the Megaforce half of this series, it's the Megaforce half that actually has characters set up that you're mildly invested in. Vrak and Robo Knight. Robo Knight, who was once the protector of the Earth, solely focused on destroying threats and not understanding humanity, eventually sacrifices himself for, admittedly a human-like alien, but it's the thought that counts. He was perfectly willing to go through that sacrifice when early season Robo Knight probably would have just wasted Vrak and, well, probably get his ass handed and just simply die in the bottom of the ocean. Next episode, Emperor Mavro has arrived, and man is he not happy with Damaris for letting the prince die. He also probably isn't happy for Damaris letting Vrak die, since, the Armada probably should have been supporting Vrak, but we'll ignore that. Meanwhile, the Rangers, particularly Jake, are being morons because they believe killing both princes meant the Armada threat is done. In case you're blind, you people can still see Armada ships with your scanners and in the skies. And of course, you do realize you only killed like one general, and there are multiple in the Armada. I mean, you had multiple in the Warstar invasion. What is wrong with you nincompoops? The fact the other Rangers go through the whole Armada is beaten rhetoric is just, what is wrong with you nincompoops? Damaris is sent to fight the Rangers, yet he's basically such a non-entity in this that he might as well be another monster of the week. And he makes off with Troy. So, under the Emperor's orders, Damaris orders Earth to surrender or the Red Ranger shall be executed. Damaris is destroyed, and stock footage from Samurai is played here. And now we enter the Legendary Battle. You see, in the broadcast versions of the final two episodes for Wrath and Legendary Battle, this has some differences to the Legendary Battle Extended Edition. I'm going with the Extended Edition mainly because it gives me more to talk about. So Orion is leaving Earth to go see if he can rebuild Andrasia, because I'm happy that they acknowledge that this isn't just like one city, a planet. he actually can go back and see if there are survivors on his home world. After all, he was a random miner in a village that got wiped out. That isn't exactly a planet. Meanwhile, the Armada is calling forth every single ship they can muster in order to invade Earth, a transmission the Rangers intercept. Levira, meanwhile, is sent out to go fight the Rangers. Obviously, this mech blows up, and Levira fights for Rangers. Mano a mano. Oh, and you know what's really insulting? Here is where I had to point this out, because I feel like I need to. In the Sentai, this wasn't the shot. This is actually new footage. This is the shot from the Sentai. Sun Vulcan was in place of Mighty Morphin. It's one thing to have Sentai-only teams, but it's another to make new footage of Sentai-only suits and just change only one Ranger. Keep the lazy train going. Levira dies, invasion forces here, the Armada begins their assault, and while they fight back, they get beaten. Mavro gloats, and we get a reminder of better seasons. Several better seasons. Multiple better seasons. Multiple better seasons, again, because it's worth repeating. So when not standing around and looking stoic, the Rangers are sorta just there, the Rangers being the legendary ones and not the Megaforce ones. Meanwhile, Orion has returned, and Countdown to Destruction called and it wants its finale back. By dawn, Armada forces arrive. I am very sure that they're just recycling footage from earlier in the season when the Armada forces attack, whenever they do so, because it feels like the amount of laziness that Megaforce would use. I get being pragmatic with your footage, but this is Megaforce. We can't say pragmatism when we can say laziness. They prepare to fire, and the Rangers arrive. This is the most insulting part of this, honestly. It's not the legendary battle. We're right back to the beginning of the season where civilians are running afraid. For all the blustering Troy goes on about saying, humanity is awesome when we work together. Humanity never lives up to Troy's ideals about humans banding together in order to face a threat. Humanity here is a spectator, a cheer squad for the Rangers. They are not helping the Rangers fight against the Armada in any capacity. They're just sitting around being scared or cheerleading for the Rangers. Again, when Countdown to Destruction did this, random civilians were more than happy to take up arms even though they were just having sticks from the rubble and golf clubs and pipes. Here, this is just sad. They're not even picking up fallen X-Borg clubs to fight the Armada. So Troy and Horizon do a kamikaze run right into the Armada's mothership and crash directly into the flagship. Emperor Mavro beats the two while sitting them down, but, well, Orion forces him from his seat using the gold mode. I didn't like when Gokaiger had Captain Marvelous destroy an empire's worth of ships this way. I don't like it when Megaforce did. They didn't earn this bullshit. Then again, Gokaiger didn't either. So Troy and Orion get off using the Space Ranger forms. Oh, they are totally ripping this off from Countdown to Destruction. Yay! The TV cut had Mavro die with his ship, but in the extended edition, he gets out saying that he survived worse, and they basically fight him. Mavro ranting about how he's still going to win, even though his entire force has been utterly annihilated. Dude, you've lost it. They do 20 years worth of modes to fight Mavro, including an upgrade mode. They call it a battleizer, but these aren't battleizers. It takes multiple finishers to completely defeat Mavro. And we get the legendary battle. This is awful. To recap, this isn't even their main army. This is a straggler army. We did not need 20 years of Rangers to beat a straggler army. And unlike the other Megaforce Rangers, they actually remember they have a teleporter. Troy throws down the sword, which is basically Megaforce's attitude. No reflection, no epilogue. What the hell is this? And that's the end of Super Mega Bullcrap. Super Megaforce suffers from the exact same problems that plagued Megaforce. Poor acting, poor scripting, poor editing, poor pacing, lack of development for lore, lack of development for characters. excessive use of Gosei Ex Machina, morals that have been so overplayed that it's pathetic to even hear them now because they sound like a parody. Except we don't have any characters we can really latch onto like Robo Knight and Vrak to make the series as a whole worthwhile. Mainly because Robo Knight and Vrak actually disappear at the beginning of this season / the end of last season, and then only appear for like 2 episodes. At least Vrak was the only character who could outplay the mentor, and Robo Knight had an arc. What else is there to this series? Nothing. I would say Robo Knight and Vrak basically carried Megaforce as a whole, but that's honestly inaccurate, mainly because Megaforce as a whole fell apart. If anything, they're like putting out a house fire that is Megaforce with 2 water droppers. If this was an anniversary series, it would be looked on as bad and choppy. By nature of being an anniversary series, however, it goes from bad to awful. Putting aside the Sentai-only teams being a nice opportunity to world build, being flushed down the toilet, a regurgitating one at that, let's look at the characters themselves. Troy here. He's boring. I have seen better acting in a school play. Then again, the dialogue he spouts is so bad I don't know if I can find fault in him for that. Noah has focus episodes but not an arc. Jake exists as Simp for Gia. Reductive? Yes. My problem with these characters is that they have traits but no actual arc. Emma is at least interesting in that she's a lunatic environmentalist. And Gia, I don't think she has ever gotten a single focus episode in Megaforce or Super Megaforce, unless you count focus as yelling into a bullhorn. Why would we make arcs for characters? Arcs are so samurai. Instead, we need to make room for fight scenes. Megaforce and Super Megaforce have the issue where the show feels like it has to pad out as much of the episode as possible with Sentai footage. Honestly, I want to see how much of this is original footage and how much of it is Sentai footage, just like proportioned minute-by-minute blocks. Meanwhile, Samurai, I even felt even though they copied and pasted pretty much everything from Shinkenger, felt more like they had original footage. Samurai didn't have the problem or the need to use fight scenes in place of substance. Of course, Samurai had its own issues with the cultural communication / translation failure that is trying to take Shinkenger, heavily rooted in Japanese culture and drama, and try to impose it into an American mold. But that's an issue for a different day. The issue for this day is that Megaforce and Super Megaforce, we have a lot of money being thrown at episodes that really should not have been made. Like the Tensou is lost episode. Completely superfluous? Yes. Oddly expensive? Probably. There's some other baffling decisions, which include representing the Saban and Neo-Saban eras the most. I mean, there are plenty of New Zealand Rangers who just live and work around the corner. Like I said, John Toohey played both Anubis Kruger and Daggeron in SPD and Mystic Force alone. He also did voice work for Power Rangers Samurai. Nick Sampson, who played Chip from Mystic Force and the Sentinel Knight in Operation Overdrive, he was literally here this season playing a one-off monster. You know, if we were going to do a straightforward adaptation of Goseiger, I think we would run into similar problems with mismanagement of money. Let's discuss that criticism now. The idea that this series is fundamentally broken because it's a Goseiger adaptation first and a Gokaiger adaptation adjacent. Not even tacked on, just adjacent. We have precedent from Power Rangers Samurai that makes me doubt it. I'll grant you, Samurai's production was chaotic because of the compressed pre-production stage. However, Goseiger was angel-themed, which may fly in Japan but not in America. I fundamentally believe they were going to do a retread of Mighty Morphin. Ever since the Neo-Saban era started, Saban has been obsessed with Mighty Morphin retreads, what with Bulk being back in Samurai, with a Skull analog in Skull Zone Sun Spike, and this would later develop further in Dino Charge and Ninja Steel. You see, fundamentally changing the premise from Angels and Miracles does have an effect of making things like Gosei Ex Machina be less acceptable, but even if I could somehow wave that away, let's take a look at what actually happened. As we saw in Samurai, they wanted to benefit from the Sentai while stripping away everything else. We see Power Rangers benefiting from the aesthetics but not the actuality when it comes to the American footage of Power Rangers Samurai. This was probably added at the behest of Bandai when they added the samurai armor and the Shogun mode. The Neo-Saban era's early days often feel like it's a tug of war. One camp wants to adhere as closely to the Sentai as possible, the other camp wants to have Power Rangers do its own thing. For example, Dayu and Decker in Samurai were far more sympathetic than their Sentai counterparts. However, this is where the desire to adhere to the Sentai clashes with whatever the writers wanted to do. The Red Samurai Ranger or Shinken Red kills Decker/Juzo in the end, and Dayu gets absorbed. See, we get backstories for this arc, but there is not exactly much of an arc. We just get backstory, whatever they do. Not much in the way of development for this. It's like we're missing swaths of the middle. But for Megaforce, there's less vibes with conflict in the background and more, okay, there definitely was a bigger plan that ended up getting shut down. An interview with James W. Bates, who wrote for Samurai and Megaforce, was published on Den of Geek. Bates in the interview claims that the crew wanted to tell more stories. After all, they have a blank canvas when the Guardian Angel theme of Goseiger gets discarded. They can tell a lot. Troy was going to be a chosen one figure. They intended to do more contrast between the robot with a mission and a bunch of teenagers responding to threats, which is something Goseiger footage actually would help them with. More was going to happen with Mr. Burley and Noah. Emma was going to do more than just go on about how the environment is so great, she's actually going to get off her butt and hold a sign protesting, which Zacher thought was very boring. Jake wanted to go exploit his ranger position for personal gain. The Rangers were going to have their own website, in-universe. But none of that is what we got. What we got was an empty husk of an anniversary season with concepts that stayed in like vestigial structures and overuse of Sentai footage because the show was under the impression that they had a quota to fill. I doubt turning it solely into a Goseiger adaptation would work because the priorities of the showrunner and management in general would have absolutely impeded any storytelling in favor of padding these episodes. Those are just my thoughts. Please consider liking, subscribing, tipping the channel, and Ko-fi. This is Cyril signing off.